Anthony, thank you for taking the time to talk to me today. So I wanted to start with you first signed with AEW back in November 2020. So like we're going on 3.5 years, like to four now. So far, how has the ride been for you, and does it feel like you're coming up to that 4 year mark?
It has been absolutely incredible, and it's very hard to wrap my head around all the stuff that Max and I have been able to accomplish just so far in the company. We came in as unknowns in terms of a national wrestling audience standpoint. To you know our 10th match in, we're main eventing with the Young Bucks for the tag team titles, and then fast forward just a year and a half, 2 years, and we're winning the AEW tag team titles. We're leading the company in merch sales and trios championships at Wembley Stadium, 80,000 people. Most tag team wins in the history of the company. Like, the list goes on. It's insane. And we're just in our infancy as a company and with the company. So there's so much more to accomplish, and I'm looking forward to it. And that starts, this upcoming weekend at Double or Nothing.
Mhm. Going even further back, I read that you were discovered by Santino Marella. Is that true? Because that sounds so 80s, like him be a wrestler. Like, isn't that what used to happen back in the day? So how did that happen, and what was the conversation like?
So what happened back then was I found out that a lot of the wrestlers were going to be at my local gym. I was in college at the time, so I got very excited about that. I emailed all my professors at university and told them I'm sick, can't come in today. And I went to the gym and tried to meet everybody that I could. And the last person that I met was Santino Marella, and I took a photo with him. And as I walked away, he was like, "Hey, you're pretty big. You look like a pro wrestler. Have you ever thought about becoming one?" And I was like, "Yeah," because at the time, that's what I was actually looking to do. I just couldn't figure out, what school to go to. I had thought about moving down to Florida or going to Lance Storm School up in Canada. There's a couple local places in New Jersey that weren't very good, but I just wasn't sure where to go. And he pulled out a phone, or his phone, I should say, and gave me the number to Pat Buck, who is the owner trainer at Creative Pro Wrestling Academy and also a producer here at All Elite Wrestling
Mhm.
currently. And he gave me Pat's number. I gave Pat a call, and a week later, I started training. And 12 years later, here I am speaking with you about it.
Yeah. Who did you like the most when you were growing up? Like, who was influencing you?
The first person that got me into pro wrestling was Sting. He
Mhm.
was the first thing that I saw that really, really drew me in. And then as I got older, I started really enjoying people like Eddie Guerrero and Dean Malenko, um, those kinds of guys, and just expanding my horizons as I learned more about pro wrestling as time went on.
So, what are your memories of being a kid watching Billy Gunn, if you have any? What was your impression of him then, before you knew him?
I loved Billy. I love the New Age Outlaws. He was one of my favorites. He was actually my figure fed champion at one point. Um, his signature series 2 figure that I have on my desk. So it's very cool that I've been able to turn that into being trios champions with him, into having a hit catchphrase with him, something that lasts a lifetime. He says all the time, like when he does these meet and greets, no one's really doing the suck it with him anymore. It's usually just they want to scissor him, and that's really cool. Knowing that that's that came from me. That's so cool. And to have him as a mentor, as an on-screen father, and most importantly to me, as a friend, it's really cool.
Is there like what was he like when you met him? Like compared to what your perception might have been like watching him and knowing whatever you did about him?
Well, funny story. Back in 2015, I had a tryout at the other company,
Yeah.
and he was one of the coaches at the performance center.
Mhm.
And I was petrified of him because we did a drill where you have to lay on your back, they blow a whistle, you get up and you square off and face off, and you go back down. And I think I was doing it a little bit incorrectly. And I remember laying down on the ground and looking up and seeing this large man with his face tomato red getting angrier and angrier by the second the more I did it wrong. And I was so scared of him. And then coming to AEW, I I was even more scared of him because I was hoping he didn't remember. So it's kind of, it's kind of funny that he's actually, he's a big teddy bear, and he would eventually become my father. So it's funny how the world works and how things come full circle.
Did you get to say, "Hey, you were like a bit of a scary, maybe like a dick when I had to try out?"
Yes, I told him the full story.
So funny how like the world works like that. Like you train with Pat Buck, and now Pat Buck's in AEW. You have that experience with Billy Gunn, and now you're working with him. What were your first impressions of meeting Max Caster? Like, how did you click with him?
Well, Max, see, I trained in Creative Pro Wrestling New Jersey. Max trained in Creative Pro Long Island.
Yeah,
Um, we trained under the same umbrella. I think we might have had one or two matches. Not singles matches. They were like maybe like six ways where it was like every man for themselves type deal. So I knew of him. I wouldn't say like we were friends at all. We were just kind of hi and goodbye type acquaintances. And then, we found out we are going to be tagging together, and obviously we were new to each other, so that was scary. So we took a lot of time to in the beginning to get to know each other as individuals. So we knew who we were as people, and then we also spent a lot of time figuring out what the acclaim was. And over time, he's become one of my best friends. I speak with him every day, always bouncing ideas off of each other. He's super creative. He's fun to be around. We are pretty much laughing all day as long as we're not, doing anything too serious. Oh, even when we're doing things seriously, we're laughing. A lot of times we're out in the crowd. We should be probably focusing on match scenarios, and we're just having a good time. But that's part of our magic together and why people enjoy us, because you can tell we're always having fun together on screen.
do you have any like particular feelings about being put in a tag team?
At the time, it was scary because I had been a singles wrestler for almost 8 years at that point. Like I started in the tag team when I first started training with a guy by the name of AC Gamble. We were a team called the Untouchables on the independent scene, and I think that ended up in about a year. And after that, I was just strictly a singles wrestler. So to go back and have to really figure out tag team wrestling at a very, very elite level, especially at that time where the tag team division was stacked, like super, like before injuries and before trios division. So we had to figure out, the art of tag team wrestling and how we fit into that.
Yeah. So does Max run his raps by you, or do you see such stuff happening like in pop culture and like say, hey, you should mention this, or does he do it all by himself?
There was at one point in the beginning where it was super collaborative, where I would, at most, I will bring the topics of the week that I saw on Twitter. He does his own research. I research, like, hey, I saw this happened in politics. I saw this happen in entertainment. I saw this happen in wrestling. I remember this, and this about this person, and then he would take that information and go into his creative process. Now it's been a little bit more. I'll just bring the topics, and then he will disappear into the bowels of the arena, and he'll go into his creative process. And I almost prefer that because I like my reactions to be more authentic. I don't want to pre-plan what I want to do. I like everything to be genuine and authentic, basically. So I think it's a lot more fun that way. It keeps me on my toes to figure out what he's gonna say. And I don't know, it's fun every week, or it's fun every week to try and come up with what the next diss might be, depending on who we're wrestling.
Mhm. So Max has like on occasion he has gotten in some like hot water for some of his raps, and I saw this week that he said that he apologized to you when he was in trouble over this Simone Biles line. So when something like that happens, and then there's like real life like heat kind of on the team, but it was his rap. Like, how is it for you being the guy that didn't say it, but you're part of the team? Do you know what I mean?
Sure. I mean, I'm always, he's, like I said, become one of my best friends, so I'm gonna support him to the end. He was apologetic to myself and Tony about that, which we both were greatly appreciative for. He learned from
Mhm.
it, and we moved on, and we became one of the most successful tag teams of all time. And you know, it happened. It's in the past. It's water under the bridge, and we moved forward.
So everyone does love the acclaimed, but it wasn't always that way when you guys started it. Where did you kind of feel the turning point where you were playing the heels, but you kind of thought like, I think they're getting us now, though. I think the tide is turning here. Do you remember?
Yes. So the my catchphrase "Everyone loves the acclaim" came out of that beginning time period of when everyone
Yeah.
really hated us.
Mhm.
Because we figured like, what would delusional bad guys think in this scenario? That which was true. Deep down, you love us no matter how much hate you spew. And we couldn't really get a gauge on anything because it was during the pandemic and we weren't wrestling in front of, full arenas. We were just in Jacksonville, and most of those tapings were very, very limited um, audiences, and also like other wrestlers filling out the crowd and such. And it wasn't until we got back to doing crowds, because I think the first show back was in Jacksonville, same place. But it was a full crowd and our music hit and everyone exploded. And we went, huh. And then we went to Texas and then we went to Miami, and it was the same every single time. Went, oh, I think we're actually I think we're actually baby faces.
Yeah.
So we got a good gauge on our connection with the audience then, and it just continued to grow as time went on.
Do you find it just as much fun being babyface? Because like a lot of people say it's more fun being heel, but given the kind of gimmick you guys do, is it just as much?
I mean, I feel like we kind of teeter on both ends of that spectrum, no matter what role we're in, because it's hard not to like us, even when we were supposed to be, I guess, the bad guys. Um, Being a bad guy and getting to say whatever you want is kind of fun.
Mhm.
But I do prefer being a baby face. I enjoy connecting with fans. I enjoy being I guess an inspiration to people and inspiring people to live their dreams and to be themselves and such. So I enjoy that connection I've been able to establish with fans, and be kind of hard to turn on them and just, start crapping on their existence.
Well, a big moment was your match at All Out in Chicago with Swerve and Keith Lee. I was there and it was so insane for you guys like during the match, and like so much so that people were like they should have called an audible and have you guys go over. What were your feelings like in the match and then afterwards kind of hearing that as a topic of discussion?
We weren't sure what to expect out of that weekend because it was our
Mhm.
first pay-per-view match. In typical social media fashion on Twitter, people were very skeptical of the match itself.
Yeah.
So we knew that we wanted to go out there and really put on a show, and we were not expecting to get the response that we knew that we were supported, but that was absolutely insane.
Yeah.
If you go back and watch the match, there's a point where I have Swerve and I have to physically hold him down to the mat, and he actually stopped resisting himself because he was even in shock of what was happening, and because we couldn't figure out what we were hearing, and then it was the "Oh Scissor Me Daddy" chant, and then the support continued to build throughout that entire match. It was one of my favorite matches. It was incredible, and it would have been great to win it there. That would have been a fun surprise. But in the end, for me, it all worked out. For the both of us, or the three of us, it all worked out because we got to do it in New York City. Caster grew up in Long Island. I grew up in New Jersey. Our friends and our family was there, so we were able to share that moment with everyone in New York City as opposed to Chicago, even though Chicago just as much deserved to see that win as the New York crowd, because they were the MVP that night. Truly, you were the MVP that night since you were in it.
So, scissoring, when so, like, when
Great transition.
I know, it is. When did you guys first come up of we're gonna do the scissoring hand, gesture, and then did you think, "Hang on, will we be allowed to say scissoring, call it scissoring, talk about scissoring, like, merchandise scissoring, trademark scissoring, all of it?"
So that first started in the dark, when we were on Dark in the
Mhm.
pandemic. We have our acclaim hand symbol, and Caster came up from behind and did the little scissor thing,
Yeah,
and you could see me on camera go like, I give him like one of those looks.
yeah.
So I was like, oh God, we're gonna get fired. We did it like again, and they kindly asked us maybe to not do that. And then for some reason, I guess we were just feeling rebellious at some point.
Mhm.
Uh, I guess when Max came back from everything that happened, and we started tagging again, we're just like, you know what? We gotta stand out from the pack. We got to do stuff that it's just different. And we went back to doing that, and starting. I started coming up with little elements to add to it, and then I think I was laying down on the ground at one point, and I looked up and I saw the first row. It was going, "Scissor me, Bowens," and I was like, "Huh, I think we're on to something." So we both started really leaning into doing it. We created a little moment where we meet in the center and do it. I started doing, I guess, the motorboat gesture to add to it, and then adding the final piece of the puzzle, which was Billy Gunn with the "Scissor Me Daddy Ass," and it just all just exploded. But there's always like little, like even getting the "Scissor Me Daddy Ass" t-shirt, I had to really, really push for every week.
Mhm.
Um, and eventually, and it wasn't so much AEW, it's the fact that we have to approve. This thing has to go all the way up the ladder to the parent company, so we have to convince these teams of network executives that it's a really good idea to put a "Scissor Me Daddy Ass" t-shirt out when they have no idea what they're in the meeting for. So we got it all pushed through, ended up becoming the number one t-shirt of 2022, which was very cool in a very short time. um and yeah, it just exploded, and it was an incredible time.
Do you have any funny stories of people not knowing about scissoring or going over people's heads, or kind of any instances where you've kind of thought, oh, yeah, that's gone over their heads?
I don't think it goes over their heads. Like, people get the I guess the reference immediately, and they love it. Like,
Yeah.
anytime I'm in a new space, or I'm in some of these. I'm in Los Angeles now, so I'm at some of these these red carpet events or these media events, and maybe they're not familiar with AEW yet, and I'm their first impression or the first thing that they know about it, and they go, well, what's your character or whatever. We're not characters, we're just ourselves. Max and I are just ourselves. That's the way it boils down to. But I'm like, hey, like, we had this handshake, it's called the scissor, and they do it. They're like, oh my God, that's fantastic. So it's usually met very positively, brings a smile to people's faces. And it's something that I do with people literally everywhere. I get stopped at airports and public, anywhere I go. There usually is one person that'll sneak up and just be like, "Hey, I don't want to bother you. Like, can we just scissor real quick?" And it's really fun.
You and Max have done some really fun music videos in the past, like when you were dissing Darby and Moxley and and Eddie Kingston. Like, what do you have any fun memories of them? And do you think that's something you guys would do again?
Yes, because the music videos played a big part in what we were doing, because they were fun and they were different, and a lot of that was, or all of it, excuse me, was us. We recognized early on that a lot of the production would be largely reserved for the huge stars that rightfully deserved it. The top stars of AEW, but we wanted to make a name for ourselves, so we shot and edited all of that ourselves. We had a great crew called GoPro Wrestling from New Jersey, um, that we'd call up like, "Hey, we have this idea. We got to make fun of these two guys or this dude or what have you," and we would um, figure out, or Max would go and he would do the song. We'd
Mhm.
deliberate on what stuff we can say. He would go into his creative process as per usual. He'd create the song. He would send it to me. I would figure out like what a visual I saw, because my degrees in TV and radio production, and then I'd relay that to GoPro, and we would just go out, and they would find locations, and we would just shoot it. And it was all guerrilla shooting, like there was nothing crazy about it, and it was all very authentic stuff. And we would do what we can to get it on television. And I think after a while of really trying to push for them, I think Goth Phase, which is the one with Darby and Sting, was the first one where people were like, these are like really fun and like really creative, and we like these guys.
Do you find now, even though you're signed with a big company, that like as a wrestler, like in this day and age, you kind of do have to be like a social media manager, like a content producer, like all these different sorts of things that you have to do to like keep yourself out there and fan engagement?
Yeah, absolutely. No matter for me, no matter who I work for, I'm still trying to use social media as a tool to grow because I think you'd be a fool not to. There's a lot of people that shy away from it, and that's totally fine because they don't want that aspect of their career. But if you're trying to grow it, even before AEW, I was able to achieve a good chunk of success on YouTube and modeling and being an activist and all these other things simply because of a cell phone.
Yeah.
Even getting more wrestling bookings on the independents. You can do and reach anybody at the click of a button, and the more obviously with AEW, I have a bigger audience to work with now, but there's people that don't have a machine behind them. They're just sitting in their bedroom who could post a video and they can get 25 million views and their life is forever changed. So it depends on what you want out of your career, but the possibilities are absolutely endless. And it's something I think you can take advantage of. You have with Instagram and TikTok and live television, combine that together, the possibilities are endless.
Do you have a particular line slash diss of Max's that really like sticks in your head?
I'd have to comb through them, but the one that always sticks out to me is, and I don't know why I find it so funny. It's the we wrestled Joey Janela and Sonny Kiss.
Mhm.
I think it was the way he delivered the line, but he said Janela was so ugly that he should borrow all of Sonny's makeup. And I don't know why it was so funny to me at the time, but like I have to go back and watch the entrance, but I was legitimately cracking up the whole match because it was just so funny. Uh, but yeah, it would probably be that one.
With you guys having such a interactive gimmick with the fans, do you have worries about the act like feeling stale at any point? And do you guys like think of ways that you can kind of overcome that?
Well, I think anybody on television is always going to be thinking about what their evolution is, and I think all of that kind of comes naturally, and we want things to be natural. We don't want anything to be forced. A lot of what we have done has been a natural progression of ourselves. Again, I won't even say characters because we're not really characters. We're just ourselves with the cliche turned up to 10 or 11. So I think we will naturally kind of um, go where we need to, and I feel like that comes with time. And we like to take things step by step and not think too far ahead. So again, we have plenty of goals and aspirations that we want to achieve, and we're kind of focused on that first and foremost.
Well, all tag teams or most like do come to an end. Have you guys ever like even talked about that or like fantasized about like how you would do it? You don't have to tell me how you do it, but have you never had the conversation?
No, not at all. Because I mean, we get asked this a lot in terms of, do you guys want to be singles? You guys want to, we both have singles aspirations, but Max and I have so much left on the table, in our opinion, in terms of a tag team. We want to get back to the top of the tag team division. We want to be tag team champions again. We want to keep building our win profile to make it extremely hard for anybody to beat our the amount of wins that we have as a tag team. We have so much to do and so much to accomplish that singles is just such, on the back burner. But we both have those aspirations in the future. Um, when that comes, I have no idea, but that's not stuff that we're worried about. We're focusing on maintaining a solid unit.
Hmm. So you unified the trios titles with Bullet Club Gold, like they won the titles. I know that's a sore subject, but um in a way, like did you find that was good? Like did you find that like having two trios belts basically in the same company, well under the same umbrella at least, was too much? And I don't know, is it kind of hard being in a tag team when there's also a trios division? As well? Has that kind of made things more difficult?
I don't think it's made anything difficult. Max and I, we like any challenge that's thrown at us, whether it's singles, whether it's tag team, whether it's trios. And we've had fun doing all three of them. So it really doesn't matter to us. It doesn't matter what division that we're in. We're gonna try and do it as successful as possible. And as far as merging the titles, I have no idea. I don't worry about any of those things. I think that's all stuff that people like to have discourse on the internet and yell at each other about. That's not my lane. I try to stay away from all that. What matters most is that those clowns took what we had away from us, and now they get to gloat about it.
Mhm.
So at some point in time, we got to get some revenge on those ass boys. And I think I've said this in about 20 different interviews. I think us in the Gun Club, they're not the Gun Club anymore, but Bullet Club Gold, the ass boys, it's a Batman Joker type scenario. We're going to be fighting forever. So kudos to you right now for being the Universal or the Unified AEW Trios champions. But I hope I think they're trying to take up their luck with Pac and his friends. I hope they beat him at some point. I hope they lose. Ugh, and just cut them right back down to size. Stupid ass boys.
Well, thank you so much for giving me your time today, Anthony. It was really nice to talk to you.
Pleasure to talk to you as well, Stephanie.